Toronto is the favorite in the Kawhi sweepstakes.
Look, obviously Toronto is very much alive in this, but I still would pick the Clippers as the favorites.
Really?
I still will go. And look, obviously he could stay in Toronto, but I still think the Clippers are the favorites. I think this is going to come down to a lifestyle decision for Kawhi. And lifestyle-wise, I think he wants to be in Southern California. He wants to be in warm weather. Like, if you're that sold on Toronto or considering Toronto that strongly, why are you meeting with as many as 5 other teams? At least 4 other teams are what the reports are. Like, what has Toronto not done for you? You won a championship there. You can make $50 million more there. The city and the country has given you everything you want. You get along with your teammates. You fit well with them. The medical staff you can trust. Like, what else is there that you need to hear from anybody? And I don't think Kawhi is just a guy that wants to have this big tour and have it be so publicized and have that attention. I don't think that's it. What I think it is he wants to meet with other teams, particularly, I'm going to say the Clippers, to see if they'll offer you what Toronto did. So to see how their medical
what Toronto did in the way that they coddled him or babied
essentially.
him.
Well, I mean, like I'm not going to say they babied him, but look, the rest, the load management. I don't know I doubt they'll go in there and say, look, Kawhi wants 15 games off a year, but I think they'll talk about the second game of back-to-backs or first game of back-to-backs. I think they'll talk about some type of load management. How do you feel about that? What if he needs rest during the regular season? So on and so forth. I think he wants to get a feel for that training staff. Can he trust them? Do they have similar routines, techniques to what he experienced in Toronto? I think all of that. And look, the Clippers will give him all of that. We know how well they've done with their front office. We know Jerry West is there. He's the great salesman. Steve Ballmer will leave no stone unturned. He won't, fret about paying any amount of money to get Kawhi Leonard the best he wants. And remember, they essentially assigned people to study Kawhi, to go to Raptors games, to know everything they could about him. They're going to have a presentation tailor-made to Kawhi Leonard, the player and the person. And I think that combined with being back in Southern California, that's going to be a lot to turn down.
Yep. Shannon, you going to change your opinion on this?
See, actually, I'm not. Because, you see, he has to go there and hope they give him that. Toronto's already giving him that. You see, this will be if Kawhi Leonard were to leave, he would be the first Finals MVP to leave and play for another team the following season. You see, Toronto is already giving him that. Load management. How many games you need? Take it. You off one of them off back-to-back? Take it. You're hoping, because you're hoping that the Clippers are going to be understanding as Toronto is. We don't know that. You see, can he build that trust? We don't have to build trust anymore. We already have trust in Toronto. We know what Toronto represents. They've given him everything that he's asked for. You're hoping that they can put pieces around him in order for him to be successful. Well, how much more successful can he be than what he was in Toronto? By winning the title and becoming Finals MVP. And also, Chris, you mentioned it. He could easily sign a 1 or 2 year deal, become a 10-year vested player, now be in line for the super duper max. Because what we've seen, everybody say, well, why would he do that with his injury history? We see Kevin Durant with a ruptured Achilles, and teams are lining up to give him a max contract. We see Klay Thompson, torn ACL, on crutches for at least the next, 3 to 4 months, lining up to give him a max deal. So a guy being injured in the NBA is not the same thing as a guy being injured in MLB or NFL. These guys are going to get their money because these are the guys that can swing the pendulum of power. The Kawhis, the KDs. So it doesn't matter. It's just, for me, I don't really know what else he can ask for. He doesn't have to worry about putting pieces in place for him to contend. He won it. And those guys are all coming back except Danny Green, who is a free agent, and Marc Gasol can opt back in with his player option. So for me, I'm still going 60-40. And after hearing you speak, Chris Broussard, I think I'm going to go 75-25. Toronto.
Look, here's the thing. You mentioned the injury, and that's why I think Kawhi does need to be careful about a short-term deal, because he is injury. His body, as big and strong and tough as he is fragile. And we've seen that. He's played, what, more than 70 games, like twice? And you mentioned an ACL and Achilles. If he has that type of injury, then yeah, soon as he's back, people will give him the max. I'm not worried about that with Kawhi. I'm worried about just wear and tear, that body breaking down. Like, why in the world was he somewhat struggling during the playoffs physically? He had 22 games off for rest after only playing 9 games the year before. And so I'm just wondering if that body is going to put, like, in 2 years, does that body break down to the point where he's not a top 5 player anymore? I don't know. I'm just saying, if I were him, wherever I go, I'm getting that 4 years or 5-year max contract just to make sure I'm taken care of.
I'm going to say what I said from the start. Number 2 is going to stiff Toronto fans just the way he stiffed San Antonio fans. Watch and listen. It's about to, the bomb's about to fall on Toronto. Not that I'm talking about real bombs, but you know what I'm talking about. They're going to be so let down because they have all but elected him the honorary Prime Minister of Canada. They can't do any more for this man than they have done. And yet, if he goes to Balmer, West, and Doc, and he says, hey, I can only play 41 games next year. You don't think they would do it? Would they sign him for 41 games? Yes, they would. Want to bet on it?
41
yes, they
might be a little
I don't know, because I have been listening to my Hall of Famer sitting across from me, that big-headed Hall of Famer up there in that monitor, and he's in Denver, Colorado today because of the loss of his beloved and great owner, and he is there because he's one of the greatest Broncos ever. He played the toughest sport we have in this country called pro football. And yet he is applauding this man. This is why my mind is blown over this whole story and development. He's applauding this man for load management, like he's invented load management, and now we should all embrace load management. So I keep reading that number 2's idol as he was growing up was Michael Jordan, who played 82 games 9 times and also played 81 games and 80 games. So 80 plus 11 times. And now he's invented load management and he's being embraced for it. He's beloved. And yet you kept giving him the injury excuse. I can't remember if you did during the conference finals, going into the finals, but it was always, I kept hearing every day, boy, the Raptors should really be concerned about him because he had his bruised thigh. It lingered all the way from San Antonio all through this year in Toronto. I don't know how, but he is fragile. And then all of a sudden, he's overcompensating for his bruised thigh, and all of a sudden his left knee develops some kind of tendonitis or something. And that's all I read about during the Philly. He's limping through games 3 and 4. Oh, my God, he's hurt. But now is anybody talking about him being hurt? No, because is that the narrative of, boy, because you brought up the ultimate point to me, he's fragile, man. He's physically and sometimes mentally, emotionally. He just won't go hurt. He won't play through it. It's who he is, who he always was in San Antonio. He had a litany of injuries in San Antonio that cost games.
Where I disagree with you,
I see what you're doing.
Go ahead, Shem. Where I disagree with you is would he be stiffing the Raptors fans? I think Kawhi is in that unique place where he can do whatever he wants, and you can't help but applaud him. Now, you won't, but in Toronto, he still would get standing ovations when he came back, right?
Everything makes sense about staying in Toronto, as this man has pointed out, except that it's in Toronto, to your point. Right. So he's going to stiff them because now he can get away with it. Well, I left you a championship. Well, but again, what would make the most sense is what Shannon is pointing out. You can make far more money to commit for 5 years in Toronto, and your team is absolutely loaded coming back because Danny Green could re-sign also. He could stay there. And Siakam's about to become a star, and Van Vliet is becoming a star, and Lowry's still there, a 5-time All-Star, and Gasol has a player option to stay. He would stay, and if Bacchus, you don't think that's a loaded basketball team?
You can also always
Yeah, but
take the long-term deal and then
You could.
ask for a trade in
could.
2 or 3 years.
You could.
Skip, I see what you're doing, Skip. What you're trying to do, Skip, you're trying to turn two fan bases against Kawhi. You've already done a great job of doing that in San Antonio, and you're trying to do it again in Toronto.
He did it.
And so you, yeah, you did. You did it. You did it. Because
Yeah,
you kept
I'm
this,
not alone in that.
You kept this going.
Yeah.
Hey, but let me tell you what Kawhi's going to do. Kawhi says he's going to go to Toronto, and he's going to tell him, I'm going to be willing to stay, but I'm going to need $191 million in American money. That Canadian money is not the same as the American dollar. So I'm going to need $190 million in American money, and you got yourself a deal.
That's how it works.
That's how I was going to say, yeah.
That's how he doesn't have to ask
It's American
for that.
money.
Yes.
Yeah, he's getting that.
You're okay.
Now, well, he in Canada. They might pay him in Canadian money. I want American money.
All I know is that Shannon Sharp, in his advancing age, has gone soft, completely soft. He's all about load management.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
who invented load management?
I think
The
number
Spurs.
two did. Okay,
Spurs.
that's
You right?
true.
Greg
I'll buy
Popovich.
that.
He invented
That's what I
load
said.
management.
I told him earlier in the show, he was off for 60 games last year before they finally said, hey, what's up, man?
Well, I mean, just their pattern of playing guys 31 minutes, no more than 31, 32 minutes, and then giving them, their load management was what, 6 games off a year, something like that. But that's what they
So in other words, Chris Broussard, so in other words, we should be blaming the Spurs because if the child is bad, he grows up to be a bad adult. Who do we blame? Who do we blame? We blame the parents. So I blame the Spurs for putting this load management in Kawhi's mind.
I do agree
so
with
Kawhi
that.
taking advantage of it.
I don't
I'm going to jump in. We got to leave it here. I'm going to save you from yourselves before you tear each other apart over this one because Chris is going to hang with us for the next segment.